YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with another episode of Overreaction Monday, just after Week 16's action. A lot of crazy games. Some overreactions getting thrown out there, around the league from fans. And a lot of you sent in some statements. They may not necessarily think those are overreactions, but they sent in a lot of good ones. We're going to react to them. I'm going to give you my thoughts. Are they overreactions? Are they the real deal? We do this video every single week. If you want to play along, follow our Twitter at GoatHouseNFL, link down below, description and comments. A lot more NFL content on there, constantly talking during live games. You're missing out if you're not following that Twitter. Really appreciate it if you could check it out, link down below, description and comments. Subscribe if you're new. Full NFL coverage, weekly picks. We're excited about our playoff coverage that we have every year, and then we even have off-season coverage as well. So please subscribe if you're new. Check out that Sided app, link down below for that as well. Let's get into the Overreaction Monday. We got some good ones this week from Tyler Martirano. The Jets will keep Sam Darnold and Adam Gase next season. Yeah, I think they're going to do both. I can't call it a fact. I'm going to say it's fair to think this. If you think they should, that might be a different story here, but yeah, I think they won 2 in a row. Looks like they're trying to win. They're playing some pretty good ball. They shut down the Browns' run game, which is ridiculous. A lot of promising young talents. They knew they weren't in position to win this year, so Gase might get a pass. Darnold might get a pass. I think they should keep searching for their future quarterback. You can't talk about it all the time. You can't just snap your fingers and, there, voila, one pops up. You got to keep looking, But I also think it's pretty easy to determine if, because there's one goal, win Super Bowl. Pretty easy to tell if you got a Super Bowl winning quarterback or a potential Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't think that's Darnold, so I'm not a huge believer in him. Sure, he can get a little better. So you need to be doing your homework. You need to keep looking out for that. Gase, I've never been a Gase guy. Never, ever. I questioned the hire at the time. And yeah, I was right to do that, I suppose. So I don't think they should do that. Either one. We'll keep Darnold. Yeah, sure, keep him around. But if you think this, I think it's definitely fair to think, because I think this is going to happen. I think Darnold will be their starter week 1 next year. I think Adam Gase will be their head coach. We'll see if that ends up the case. The coach firings, will start a week from today, actually. What do they call it? Black Monday. So that's something. I'm kind of excited about the, just NFL news in general. So even though sometimes not the best news, but we'll see. Next one from Raider Nation. The Raiders need to fire Gruden and draft all defense. I think it's an overreaction. Gruden, I still think, is a good coach. I think he's got a good system. Obviously has the knowledge. Overall this year, he's done a pretty good job, I thought, with the play calling, running the offense. There's been some questionable, red zone. You question some red zone play calling, kind of insisting on Jason Witten sometimes. Sometimes, though, it's not like it's a problem where he needs to be fired. I'm sure it's a learning experience for everybody here. The decision to play for a field goal against the Dolphins was pretty costly. It was pretty bad. So, but it's not like it's consistently happening. It's not like that I fully expect it to be a problem for Gruden. Like, I'm not fully expecting us to get into the next year and Gruden's going to be pulling the same stuff nonstop. It hasn't really been nonstop, first off. I just don't expect it, And I still think they got a bit to do. I talked about in the offseason, they got a solid team, but it's just there's not enough there, And they probably should have made the playoffs, but another year, see how he does. Draft all defense. They need to they need to draft defense. I don't know about all defense. I think they definitely could use another receiver. You got to make sure the offensive line's been fine, but you have some injuries, some guys that, won't be there forever as well. So I think make sure that's set. I'm sure the questions will come up about Derek Carr, but that's really not a big need there at quarterback. But he can improve. It seems like every year he's better in the first half of the season, the second half. Not that he's ever bad or even close to that, but yeah, I think it's an overreaction though. I can see people feeling this way. Disappointing losses, some pretty stupid decisions, especially in the Miami game there, especially at the end. So I can understand people kind of thinking this way. It just happens. I just think it's an overreaction though. Packer Central, Mitchell Trubisky should be franchised. Yeah, it's a pretty clear overreaction. I think Rex Ryan said it on TV this morning or whenever it was, that they could franchise tag him. I mean, the franchise tag for quarterback, I think it's going to go down a little bit this year compared to last year, but it's still going to be $23.5 million in 1 year for Mitchell Trubisky. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It shouldn't happen. I don't think it's, even if the Bears probably like, especially because they're winning right now, they probably like Trubisky more than the rest of the world does. But I don't think they even I don't know if they're considering that, it's just way too much money. Franchise tax goes for franchise players, not a franchise player. It's just an overreaction there. It's, they're winning. They're playing good. He's playing pretty solid. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of solid quarterbacks that probably wouldn't even get that though. They'll probably extend him. Will that mean he'll be the clear-cut starter? No. They'll probably extend him something cheaper. Decline his option. I don't think coming in for 4 games, lost to the Lions as well. I don't think that's really enough to say, all right, we're franchising this guy. It's just not enough. And he's shown more of the bad than good over his career. So it's just no way. I just don't see it. Sticking with Bears here, trusty number true. Bears can make a deep playoff run with their revamped offensive scheme. Offensive scheme looks good. Makes it a lot easier on the quarterback and the offensive line. So that's worked out. It's ripping. It's looking good right now. It's also kind of giving problems to teams. The game plan factor. Teams just don't have a bunch of tape on this. The old Bears are within this season. The old Bears and new Bears. It's just the only difference is the scheme, and that kind of throws off defenses. What do we expect? Teams will probably catch on here. That kind of plays a part what I'm about to say. I think it's an overreaction. Again, they're feeling it right now. They're looking good. They're scoring a lot of points. And this really isn't a knock on them because they can't really control it, but they've played in a row. They've played the 4 worst defenses in football. Cowboys probably would be in there as well. They're picking it up. So maybe 4 out of 5. That's probably being generous. But they're still scoring. They're still playing good football. They're still executing. But my point is playoff teams are not the same as the Lions, Vikings, Jaguars, Texans. Those are not the same teams. We know that. It's not rocket science. They can still play good against those teams, but playoffs is about playing at the highest level every single week. They can have that big week, whoever they play in the first round, they can continue to play like they did against the weaker competition. It's possible they can play again, but will they do it consistently and make a deep run? I just don't think so. I don't think they have the talent. Again, kind of going back to the game plan. It's a matter of time and teams just game planning correctly for the scheme. It's a change of scheme. The better teams that know how to game plan. The game plan becomes more of a factor in the playoffs. This is it. We lose. We're done. Let's sit down. Let's figure this out. We know what this team's going to do because whatever was successful for them, that is what they're going to do. So we've seen the game plan factor, the matchup factor in more in the playoffs. See it every year. It becomes quite obvious, especially after the games. You see, okay, that's what happened there. And we'll be doing a lot of that. So they can't make a deep run. They're just not there yet. They need more talent on their team. They just don't have the talent or the experience that the rest of the NFC has. They can win a playoff game probably. They'd be heavy underdogs for that, but no run there. Peter Barron, Falcons show that the Chiefs' offense isn't as good as people think, and it will get slowed down a lot in the playoffs. We don't call it Overreaction Monday for nothing, okay? It's overreaction. But there is a point here. There is a point. The Falcons defense looks pretty good, but that's besides the point. Falcons defense played very well against the Chiefs. They showed us something. They showed other teams something. I talked about this a lot in the recap. Teams, when they're about to play the Chiefs in the playoffs, they will go to that tape. They'll watch a lot of tape. They'll go over a lot, but they will go to that Falcons tape because that'll be the number one tape they want to look at because what happened in that game. So the Falcons may have shown something to help against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are still kind of getting fancy. Looks like they're bored out there. I think they got more. I think they got better, actually. I think they got better everything for the most part. But mainly play calling, when it's serious, when it's all said and done, this is the way they're going to do things. But the Falcons did show that maybe teams can slow them down. But it's really good. I don't think it'll, I don't know if it'll, slow down a lot. It's not anywhere near that. I think it's going to be okay. Does that mean they're for sure going to win a Super Bowl or anything like that? No, but the Falcons may have shown something, but I just think this would be an overreaction to think this. Next from RJ DeLiberto, the Steelers once again are Super Bowl contenders. Huge win against the Colts. Colts are a good team. Not only that, come from behind. That will do wonders for, I guess, the team morale, the locker room, everything. Momentum, gives them a big boost, give them some energy there. That's great. I don't want to say the Steelers can't win the Super Bowl. That's tough to say, but I do think it's an overreaction. Based off one game, there's a lot of problems still the last couple weeks that, I thought even, I was saying the Steelers might be able to find some gaps, within this defense. This team is starting to move the ball a little more against the Colts defense, gaps in the cover too, perhaps. It kind of started to happen there. So I think it's just all about the matchup, not really how good is this team, because the Colts are better than the Bengals, obviously. It's more about the matchup rather than how good the team is. So I think we can't forget too easy. I think people forget too easy about not with the Steelers, with everybody, You can't forget what just occurred before this past game, and that's something. Teams will kind of game plan for them. They're pretty limited on offense, even though they weren't in the second half, fourth quarter against the Colts. I just think it's an overreaction. If they go out and dominate the Browns, maybe we can get closer to this, perhaps. So we'll see. Lucas, Fitzpatrick is better in the Dolphins' offense than Tua right now. I think that's a fact. I think we all can agree that's a fact right now. Tua just doesn't look right. I talked a lot about it in the recap. There could be some legitimate excuses why that is and why Tua could be okay for the future. So I'm not really concerned about his future, but it's a little concerning right now that Ryan Fitzpatrick has to come in and save your ass pretty much, and they're just clearly better with Fitzpatrick. It might be, it's a little concerning at the moment. But the main thing here is not only is Fitzpatrick playing better, doing more, winning them games here at the end, even though Tua's won some games, played well. The whole offense just seems just smooth, just more than with Tua. Everything about it, especially in that Raiders game. And it's crazy. I guess his Fitzpatrick leadership, his knowledge, he's definitely got to be deeper into the playbook. Well, knows it, better than Tua perhaps. That could be all the reasons, but it just seems like that. So that's it's a fact right now. It's a fact. But he'll continue to be the closer. We'll see how that works off. Out for them, big game against the Bills. Big game against the Bills for the Dolphins this week. We'll see if they get into the playoffs. It's kind of a surprising team looking before the year started that they're as good as they are. Playoff team there. Tyler Andreas, the Titans are pretenders. Depends on what you mean by pretenders, I guess. Like Super Bowl pretenders or like pretenders they're not as good is probably that. But we could answer this two ways. If we're talking Super Bowl pretenders, I think I'm pretty close to calling that a fact. I'm pretty high on the Titans. I like their offense a lot. I think they're built for the playoff time of year. I guess that kind of let us down in the Packers game with that. But I do like the Titans. I'm as high or higher on them maybe than a lot of people. But I never really thought Super Bowl. I thought that maybe AFC Championship game. Really thought Super Bowl. Why? Mainly no pass rush. We knew they didn't have a pass rush. That's a major problem. Offensive line's pretty beat up, and with the offense, sometimes in big games they dig themselves holes. So I even though they're a pretty damn good team and can make a run, I don't know if I can call them a Super Bowl. And my list for Super Bowl contenders and who can win the Super Bowl is smaller than probably anybody else in the world. I think people want to play it safe and put as many teams as they can on there because this team could win it. This team's got a 1% chance of winning it, 5%. I think you need to check an insane amount of boxes to win a Super Bowl. So that's just me. But in terms of pretenders, maybe he means they're not as good. I think it's definitely an overreaction because I think if by saying this we would be basing it off of just the Packers game, just the Packers game. Titans had a really good year. Offense was number one statistically for a reason. In the Packers game, snowy, sloppy game, but a game they may have to win. In the playoffs perhaps. So really no excuses there. But my point is, with a lot that happened in that game, the Packers started with the ball on the 40-yard line. They're going to score. That kind of digs yourself a hole already. Some weird mistakes that Tannehill doesn't normally make. Some weird calls in the game. The Packers weren't penalized once. Things that, whether you agree with them or not, that's besides the point. Just a lot of things that don't happen much at all. If you combine all those things, Titans play the Texans next week. I know the Texans aren't that good, but just an example. None of those things will probably happen. It really has nothing to do with the Texans, That's kind of my point. So I think you can't really have too many takeaways from that game. My takeaways are pretty much the same from the Titans. I think they're a really good team. They can't dig themselves holes. The pass rush, the lack of pass rush, not even defense, really. I think the secondary could be getting better. Tough game against Devontae Adams. Pass rush will stop them. The pass rush will stop them from winning the Super Bowl. That's why they're not going to win the Super Bowl. So, I guess you can answer that multiple ways. But I don't think we can overreact from one game, in the snow, in Lambeau. Just a lot of weird things happen in that game. Tyler Andreas is on fire here. Number 2 for him. Cardinals are not real contenders until Kingsbury is gone. Definitely a debatable one. But I'm gonna call this overreaction. It's tough because Kingsbury, he's cost them at times this year. Some interesting play calls. I think it's more of decisions when to go for it. Mainly look at the 49ers game. I didn't mind his play calling, just going for it on 4th down, that last situation, pretty bad. But deciding when to play for a field goal, timeouts, things like that. Not good at times. And then looking at it that way, if you get somebody that can do those things better, then they're more of contenders, sure. But I don't think it's that simple. I think Kingsbury has a really good system. Kyler Murray fits that system. It's gonna be tougher to find a replacement that fits that system. I think tougher than people think. Nobody's really talking about that. I'm sure you can get some other coaches out there that are good, and they can definitely make it work. Kyler Murray can be good in those systems. The enemy system, like a Chiefs system. Murray might turn the ball over a little more. He has turned the ball, had some bad ones too, recently. So, I don't know. It's going to be different. There's going to be an adjustment period, so they actually might go down for a second, for a year. If they do that, switch right now, then kind of go back up, and then they'll get back on track. So you could debate this so many ways that they could kind of they could be more of a contender, but they got to get there. Can these guys play in the system they drafted for this system? So kind of all over the place in this one. I think looking at the Niners game, I think it was more than Kingsbury. I think Murray can't turn the ball over. He has those interceptions at times. I know Dan Arnold fumble. I don't agree that was a fumble. Some key things there though. Players really didn't play well enough. They played against some second and third stringers. So I don't know. I think it's an overreaction to say this right now. I don't think you move on from Kingsbury and you get somebody new. We even guarantee that they get somebody that's just a better play caller. It's not going to just magically make them Super Bowl contenders. Not that simple. So I'd say it's probably an overreaction. I don't know if I ever had it pop up yet. I think I did. We're moving on. Tony Benz. Ravens seem to be back in full force, looking like they can win a few playoff games. Yeah, I'm going to say I think it's a fact. I'm not saying it's a fact they're going to win a few playoff games. They could win a few playoff games, though. Offense looks dangerous. It looks like it's back. And there's some teams out there that are playing really good, maybe because, who they're playing, all these things, and there's maybe reasons. I think out of all that, and we don't know the correct answer for all those teams. The Seahawks playing great defense. The Bears got offense going right now. Ravens got offense going all of a sudden as well. There's probably more I could talk about. The Falcons are playing great defense. They're not really a playoff team, but, there's a lot more I can talk about. Those are just some examples, but nobody really knows the true answer. We can make we can take good guesses. You can make good predictions. But if I had to pick one that feels most true to me, it's the Ravens offense. Why? Because they kind of went back to what was successful last year, and I kind of called this happening. Because when they played the Steelers with all their backups, it looked like they went to a lot of the old schemes, just straightforward running, just a lot of power blocking, and I'm like, they might be shifting back towards it. They're running same play calls, types, as last year before, but it was mainly offensive line schemes. Actually, what was different, just more straightforward running. So, or less of it, when they were struggling. So. I think that makes it like almost a fact that their offense is pretty much back on track. Doesn't matter that the Giants got a good defense. So I'm about to say it doesn't matter who they're playing, what defense they're playing, but the Giants actually have a good defense who they just beat. They've been looking good in general. So yeah, I think they're playing. I don't know if their defense is as good as last year though. Their defense is still good, well coached. They've had some sloppy play here and there. I like their offense better than their defense. That's pretty crazy given what was going on earlier in the year, but they can win some games. Lamar Jackson's dangerous. It's pretty much an impossible game plan. You can game plan for it. You're not going to feel great about it, and it's most of the time not going to work, how you planned it. There's adjustments mid-game. Somehow they got to avoid the Chiefs. They can't beat the Chiefs. And I think a big reason for that is actually their defense, because the Ravens, when they win on defense, it's because they're a very good blitzing team. It's not the only reason, but it's a big reason. And can't do this. Doesn't work against the Chiefs, especially their way. It doesn't work. They have to pretty much change how they play. Got to change how you play against the reigning champions. Not going to go well, pretty much. So unless they got some master plan that they're kind of working on, then yeah, I think they can win some games though. Fake Derek Dietrich. The Bengals are better than we think. The Bengals are hot right now. They beat the Steelers. They look pretty good, damn good doing it. Beat the Texans. They scored 37 points while doing it. Texans don't have the best defense, but Bengals are still looking good. Bengals are better than we think. I can answer this multiple ways probably. Better than we think right now. We all saw them win 2 games. They're still towards the bottom of the NFL. I think it's an overreaction, but I will say this. I will say the Bengals will be better than – I think the Bengals going forward are better than what most people think. I think that's a fact. I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to be a sneaky team last year. They can't just half-ass the offseason, though. But I think – and another thing is here's a big one. The coaches. The coaches are better than we thought. I think fact. I think a guy like Zach Taylor, I think better than we thought. I wasn't really talking about, but I think a lot of people were talking about him getting fired, perhaps, but the way they've been game planning has been a big reason they've been winning, adjusting to know your team, know your opponent, know your matchup, adjusting that way. Limited players as well. Joe Burrow's not in there. They're finding ways to win, and it's standing out. So the coaches, with that coaching staff, ability to improve, ability to game plan correctly, know your opponent, with the young talent that they have, Joe Burrow going forward, and the ability to get better in the offseason because cap space and good draft pick. They should be a lot better than most people kind of give them credit for right now. And they are playing pretty good ball right now. So that's interesting to think about. Ryan Pollack, A.J. Dillon can replace Aaron Jones on the Packers. They don't need to re-sign Jones and can extend Williams instead. I think it's an overreaction. I think a lot of people are talking about this because A.J. Dillon had a really good game, and credit to him, had a really good game against the Titans in the snow game. I think, one game in the snow, where the Packers have a pretty good lead. I don't think that could determine that. Aaron Jones is way more of an all-around back. He's a key piece to their offense. I think Dillon could replace Jamal Williams. I think they're both very solid number 2 backs. I think Aaron Jones is the number 1 back. A guy like Jamal Williams could go somewhere else and potentially probably could start for. He's probably better than a lot of teams. Maybe not a lot, but some teams starting running backs currently. But I think that's more of the route. I think they take a pretty significant hit if they lose Aaron Jones. Dillon was kind of built for that snow game yesterday, perhaps. Jamal Williams kind of built like that too if he's healthy. Aaron Jones getting better catching the ball, I think, too, especially downfield. So I think that's a key. It's a kind of a smaller piece. Besides the fact that he's a better runner in any type of run, that's the bigger part. But I think catching the ball downfield is a pretty big part as well. So I think it's an overreaction to think this. I think they're the Packers, Aaron Rodgers. It's a very good team. They're going to be good without Aaron Jones, but they take a hit. They take a hit with and with comparing with and without Aaron Jones there. So I think it's an overreaction. Does it happen? Maybe they do it. Maybe they don't want to pay Aaron Jones. They don't want to pay a running back. Maybe they're one of those teams. And I guess we can sit here and debate, what he's demanding, if he's demanding something, if he's demanding this. And then maybe there's a scenario where I'm like, okay, yeah, I wouldn't pay him. I guess there's probably a scenario out there. That's going to be interesting this offseason, but I just don't. I think they take a hit without Aaron Jones, so I don't think they can think that way. We'll see, though. We'll see what happens. Jeremy Chinstan, the Browns were and always will be frauds. It's an overreaction based off one game and will always be a bit of an overreaction, but it brings up an interesting topic here. Basically, are the Browns kind of frauds? Are they pretenders right now? Are they not as good as they made it look like the last several weeks? And I'd still say overreaction because they're a good team. They can win a playoff game, maybe multiple. They got a good offense. They got a good offense. They lost to the Jets, and I know they were missing a lot of guys, and yeah, they weren't at full strength. They are better than what they were on the field for obvious reasons, but they still should win that game. Really good teams find ways, unless your quarterback's out. Even if Keenum was playing, I would expect him to win that game. But so they got to find ways, and they can't have those bumps in the road. Stefanski, the running game, they can't really have that. But yeah, I guess why you can make the case that they aren't as good as they made it seem like, maybe because they don't have the experience for the playoffs. But big thing here is if a team takes away the run game, or if a team just scores, rapidly scores on them and takes the run game away from them, they look like frauds then. They're going to look like frauds, even though they probably aren't. But there are scenarios where they'll look that way. And that's probably why, because the playoffs, you play the best competition. You have to play the best every week after week after week. You don't get a bye in there. You don't get it unless you're the 1 seed. You start with the bye. Once you get going, though, in terms of a playoff run, you don't get the Jets in there who they lost to. You don't get to play the Jags in there. You play, the back-to-back greatest teams in football, and you can't have those hiccups, those moments at all. And that's why the Browns probably aren't going to make a run in the playoffs. They could be out of the playoffs. I think they're deserving of being in the playoffs. They're a good team, really good offense. They're dangerous. If their offensive plan works, which is run the ball, run the clock, manage the time, win the time of possession, wear the other team out, and that opens up the pass, keeps the defense guessing. If that works, it looks dominant, and it can beat anybody if it works. It's one of those big ifs. I think the Titans are pretty similar. Pretty similar to that. You see when they dig themselves holes, like the Packers game, the same thing kind of pops up, and it makes people think maybe they're pretenders. And that's exactly what I'm saying here. If that pops up, everyone's going to be like, the Browns are pretenders. They're a pretender in that specific scenario, and maybe because that's their system, they won't make it super far. There's a lot to debate here, but it's definitely interesting to see what happens with them. They got a big game against the Steelers this week. This was a good episode, though. I think people sent in some really good ones, hot topics here, for the NFL heading into Week 17. We'll have you covered for this last week. And then when the season's over, we got our awards, player rankings, and full playoff coverage, of course. Cannot wait for that. We'll have rankings for playoff teams, the playoff teams remaining every single week, more predictions, and then the offseason NFL draft free agency coverage. So we got you covered. Please subscribe, smash that like button, turn notifications on so you don't miss a thing. Make sure you follow that Twitter. We need more followers on that Twitter. It's definitely worth it. You're missing out on a lot. Link down below. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.